hunt begins again.
Welcome to V Rising, my name is Nilaus, and this video will introduce you to the new vampire-based action survival construction game that just came out on Steam. I'll cover the features and mechanics to introduce you to the game and show how it all works together to support the core gameplay loop. So what is V Rising? Well, V Rising can be very easily described as Valheim with vampires, just to set the genre and style of play and place it in a sub-genre like that. But I think it's unfair to just call it that, because it has so much more to offer and there are a lot of cool mechanics and features that make it its own thing, and it does not feel at all like a clone. So you start by waking up as a weak vampire who have slumbered for centuries, and you need to fight, craft and rebuild your domain. After a short tutorial, you lay the foundation to your future Gothic castle. The core gameplay loop in its very essence consists of base building and exploration. This starts from your base by you setting a goal and then making an excursion to either kill a boss, find some materials or gather resources for the further expansion of your base. This means that your time will be split between doing a couple of things, mainly sort of base building, which is a nice, calm experience where you tinker with your machines and your factory, dare I say, and there is no time pressure. Then it comes to the exploration, where you're navigating the world outside of your base. It's fast-paced combat and it's gathering resources for your base, and that's the exploration part. And those two things sort of mix and match, and basically you define your own goals when you're in your base. Maybe you need more copper, maybe you want to find some whetstones, maybe you want to unlock some new recipes by hunting bosses, and then you plan out an excursion and go out into the world at your own pace and with your own objectives in mind. That is the core gameplay loop, so let's take a look at the mechanics and features that support this into a unique and interesting game. If this sounds like an interesting game, and then I would love to make more guides for this if there's an interest for it. So let me know if there's an interest, with comments, with likes, and of course consider subscribing to be able to see those guides as they come out. I'm also streaming this on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at Twitch TV/Nilaus at 8 PM Central European Time, so you are very welcome to drop by. Building and expanding your castle. You start by locating a suitable location and placing your castle heart. This is, as the name suggests, the heart of your castle. And from here you can then claim territory and build walls and build machines, build decorations, build storage, all the things that you'd want in a base. This system is much simpler than Valheim, as you can see. It has a modularity and you build in these nice squares. However, this modularity also makes it a lot more accessible, since you don't have to sort of be finicky with the connection points and that kind of thing. But it also means that it's not supposed to be an aesthetic build. You can't really build very like big aesthetic castles that you might want to build, because you can't even pan the camera out. So this is focused on functionality and thematic, and it does that wonderfully. Speaking of thematic, there are a lot of machines to build, and these eventually need to be built in dedicated rooms to get sufficient bonuses. This means that your castle will sort of become a sprawling mess of corridors and rooms and that kind of thing, which I think is very much in tune. Processing items in machines is excruciatingly slow. The good thing is you don't have to attend it, but it is very slow. And that means it basically tells you, don't sit and wait for it, do something else in the meantime. And I think that's a great way of doing it, because you can load up your machines and then head out for another excursion, and then when you come back, the machines will be done processing. And I think this is a good example of how the mechanics in the game encourage the gameplay that they want. Come back with a lot of items, put them into machines, and then go out again. When you come back, you will have a lot of things that are ready for building, and that's sort of how the loop progresses, instead of you sitting in the base hammering away on ore to turning it into ingots. Combat as a vampire. Combat in V Rising is fast-paced, but it doesn't feel frantic or spammy. There's always something to do: repositioning, dodging, attacking, using your abilities. And all of these actions have an impact on the battle. So you can't just walk up and start wailing away at the enemy and expect to win, because that's not how the combat as in V Rising works. You're fast, you're agile, you dodge, you reposition, and you use your abilities to the maximum. There is no mana stat, which is really interesting. So your cooldowns, you can just use them when they're up, and you can keep using them. You don't have to worry about sort of a persistence, a continual drain over time. And I think that makes it really comfortable. That means you don't have to manage that part. You can look at the battlefield instead and focus on that, instead of focusing on mana conservation or that kind of thing. Positioning is super important, because all of your abilities are skill shots. That means you have to point them to where you want to hit, and if the enemy moves, then you don't hit anything. So that also goes the other way around, that when enemies target you, you can just step out of the way and you don't get hit. That means you really need to pay attention to what's going on the battlefield, particularly when you're up against many enemies, and dodge around and get the kills as cleanly as possible. So how does progression work in V-Rising? Well, there's no XP to be found, there's no weapon skills to train, there's no mana to manage, so how does progression actually work? Well, it comes in two forms, character progression and base progression. Your character progression as a vampire comes from three things: getting better at the game, kind of obvious, right? And also getting better gear, which will sort of constitute your level, and then getting new abilities to use. Gearing up your vampire. Well, your gear can have specific bonuses, but the biggest part of your gear is actually the item level, or the gear levels, gear score. And that constitutes your level, your power level for your character. So basically, when you look at an item, you don't have to compare a certain number of stats with other stats. You basically look at it and go, is it higher item level or gear level? Then it's probably better. Higher gear level gives you more hit points, gives you more spell damage, and basically is your progression, your equivalent to XP levels. So you want to be upgrading your gear as much as possible to get a higher gear score. New abilities and recipes are acquired by killing so-called V carriers. This is the game's name for bosses, and these can be found in the wild. Some are wandering, some have fixed locations, and you can start by tracking these from your blood altar in your base. Here you can also see what kind of bonus you will get and what recipes will unlock when you're killing them. So that's a really cool thing. On top of that, you will get a spell when you kill them. Bosses are naturally tougher and have a couple of unique abilities that you need to learn to beat the fight. They also, very interesting, they respawn, so you're gonna fight the same boss again and again. What constitutes a tough boss in the beginning actually just looks like a bit tougher normal mob when you progress. So that's a pretty cool way to sort of recycle it. It also allows you to sort of farm them a bit for some materials, some crafting materials if you want that. But I really like the fact that they put in some effort into these enemies, and therefore you can actually come back and do it again. This is also a really good example of how a mechanic supports the core gameplay. You can't progress with your base without killing the bosses, so killing your bosses gets you, the character, stronger, but also gets you new recipes to unlock in your base. Really cool way of tying things together. Being a vampire in V-Rising. So far, the features we've been looking at are sort of generic features that could fit into any game. But what about the actual vampiric nature, the thematic things about being a vampire? How does that fit into the game? Well, blood is a very core part of being a vampire. It is literally the bread and butter of being a vampire. So how is that modeled in this game? Well, when an enemy is low hit points, you can feed, which instantly kills the unit, and fills up the red orb. Alright, so we now have a red orb filled. What can we use this for? Well, it serves a couple of purposes. It is a survival mechanic, so you must maintain it, and it deteriorates over time. But don't worry, it's easy to maintain, so there's no really consideration that you're not going to die of hunger every 15 minutes. You know what game I'm talking about. And the other objective, or the other thing you can use it for, is for healing. So it means that you can use your blood to top up and always be at full health, which is really nice. So healing it out is really easy because you just need to feed in order to get more blood in order to heal. So that is very, very simple. However, there's a catch, and there's some extra layers to this, because there are different types of blood and there are different quality of blood. There are the different types confers different bonuses. So brute, creature, rogue, worker, and others later on, they will be conferring specific bonuses, and you, depending on your playstyle, you might prefer one over the other. Or for example, workers, it's great if you can find a worker, feed on them, and then go out harvesting. You get extra materials, while rogue makes you crit and gets faster. Creature gives you health recovery. So in that case, there are different bonuses depending on what you want. Now the quality means that the higher the quality of the blood you're feeding on, the better it will be, and it overrides. So if you feed on someone with 47 and then afterward feed on someone with 3, then it's just going to be 3 after that. Once you feed on something, that's going to be what you have until you feed on another one, which will then override the existing. What this function feature means is that When you get a really good blood type and a really good blood level, then you want to keep it. And that means you will be hesitant to use healing, because if you use your healing, then you deplete your blood and you will have to feed again, and then you will get a bonus that isn't quite as good. It also means that you can go out of your way to find a really good bonus before tackling a difficult boss, or you can just roll through with whatever comes around, and if you see something good, you just grab it. It depends again on your playstyle, how deliberate you want to be, and how much reacting and how much planning you want to do. The quality of the blood, though, is not dependent on enemies. So you can find really high quality blood on very low levels. So always keep in mind, look at the enemies you're fighting, see if anyone has a good blood level, and then maybe see if it's time to top up again. You can be attacked while feeding. So when you see a group and there's one of them you want to feed on, try to conserve that to the last, and then have your snack at the end of the fight instead of in the middle of the fight. You can also use the feeding to instantly kill enemies, so that you start the feeding ritual and then cancel immediately by left clicking. Then you will just do an instant kill and it won't override your existing feeding. But it's a neat way of getting instant kills on low health units. Daylight and other weaknesses. Vampires are known to have a lot of weaknesses. Actually, a lot of weaknesses. One of them being daylight. Most prominent maybe is daylight. And how does that work in a game where you have a day-night cycle? Well, luckily they have a very reasonable implementation of this. So if you are out during the daylight and you find yourself in the sun, you will get this ray of sunlight on you, and you need to find shade immediately. If you don't find the shade immediately, then you will start taking a lot of burn damage, and it goes up really quickly. That means when you're moving around during daylight, you have to stick to the shade. Luckily, the implementation of shade is quite generous. It doesn't take much to stay in the shade, and that's also just very nice. It still makes it difficult, annoying, dangerous to walk around in the sunlight, but it doesn't make the game unplayable. And that's really, really nice that they didn't make it unplayable during the off time of day, like a certain other game that will remain unmentioned. So how does that affect your gameplay? Well, my recommendation is that you start planning during the day, and you start your excursions at dusk, and then you head out to do your exploration, your traveling, your boss fighting, and then start heading back when dawn is coming, so that you will get back to your base by dawn. In your base very early, you can build this mist generator that will protect you from the sunlight, and that means you can start working, still working in your base during the day with machines, expanding your base, doing small forays into the nearby surrounding area for just resource gathering. And I think that's a really good way of balancing it, so it kind of ties well together. The day-night cycle is yet another feature that ties well to the overall core gameplay of do an exploration run, come back and build, do an exploration run. And I think that since it's about the third of the day that's daytime, that's probably also the amount of time that you will generally over the course of the game spend in your base, while 2/3 will be spent outside of the base. Depends, of course, on your liking and your preference, but that's one of the beauties of this game, is that you can choose how to play it, how much you want to focus on one part and how much you want to focus on the other part of this game. So if you watched all the way to the end, I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, consider hitting the like button. That helps a lot with the discovery of the videos like this. And of course, consider subscribing if you want to keep up with more guides. And speaking of more guides, I'd like to do more guides, but I would also like to do more guides based on the feedback. So leave a comment on what you'd like to see for this game. I will be playing this game sort of just from one end to the other. I'll be streaming it on Twitch. This is Monday, Wednesday, Fridays at 8 p.m. Central European Time. And it is on Twitch TV/Nilaus. And I hope that you want to drop by and hang out as we play this game. I'm absolutely enjoying it so much, and I would just want to go do more with this game. So hope this video caught your interest. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, take care and stay effective.